Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture Down Under. Today we're going to be doing another Omnibus overview, taking a look at the Ultimates Omnibus reprint by Mark Millar and Brian Hitch. We can see the front cover of the dust jacket here is the same image as what featured on the original printing of the Omnibus. We can see the original Ultimates team with Cap front and center, and Iron Man, Giant Man, Thor, Wasp, Hawkeye, and I believe Black Widow. All featured as well. If we turn around, take a look at the spine, again it's the same as the original printing. It's got the Ultimate title, the creators' names, and it's got Cap down the bottom. And taking a look at the back of the dust jacket, we can see that we've got the covers to the original issues, and we've got a parental advisory warning and a $100 USD cover price. In Australia, you'll probably get this in the low $100 if you get it from an online store, and it's definitely worth it. It's a good story, it's got amazing art, and yeah, definitely worth the bang for your buck, even though it's a quick read. So let's take a look underneath the dust jacket, and this is where you get one of the major changes compared to the original release. The original release, I believe, featured the faux leather black cover that the old Marvel Omnibus used to have. Now we have printed cover boards. So on the front, we can see the cover from the first Ultimate collection that's got Captain America holding that shield up high, Thor doing the same thing. And that image continues across the spine and then onto the back. It gives us the cover to the second Ultimate collection, and it's all sort of linked together. So it works really well. I always prefer to get printed cover boards rather than the faux leather black, which is a lot less interesting, though even that is preferable to just the plain black cardboard that you used to get with old DC Omnibus. Alright, let's turn it over and let's take a look inside and have a little bit of a talk about the story itself. So we look inside, we've got our blue pages here, the same cover from the front cover inside. I really love the Captain America in World War II stuff. I really like the costume that they gave him for the Ultimates. I like the helmet, and I liked the medieval shaped shield. We've got all the creators here. Mark Millar wrote the whole thing, and Brian Hitch pretty much penciled the whole thing as well. So you get continuity in both writing and art, which is fantastic. And then we've got all the rest of the people who are credited in creating this collection as well. Alright, and then we can jump in. We get a introduction here by Joss Whedon, and then we jump straight in. And our first little bit, we've got Cap back in World War II. This is all fantastic stuff. The artwork in this is amazing, okay? Recently, we did an overview of the Heroes Reborn Omnibus, and in comparison, this was only, say, 4 years later, and the art is totally different, and it's much more cinematic than what we used to see in even the late 90s. You can really feel Brian Hitch's work and the authority coming throughout this Omnibus, and yeah, the art's just sensational. Okay, lots of full page or double page spreads. Later on, we will get to the giant Gatefold spread, which I don't know if it still holds the record, but for a while held the record for the largest single panel in comics history. And we also get some celebrity cameos. We can see Shannon Elizabeth here. These have aged a little because it's almost 20 years old, this series. But for someone like me, who this is where I got into Marvel Comics back in the early 2000s, the nostalgia, as well as this being a genuinely fantastic book, I read through this all again in about 3 days, because there's a lot less exposition than in 90s or 80s comics. They really let the art tell a lot of the story. And it's really just like reading a summer blockbuster. It's like going to the movies and watching just any of those movies is just all action over substance. It's really Michael Bay if he did the Avengers. The Hulk, we can see Bruce Banner here. The Hulk is an interesting character throughout this story. Definitely not as friendly as he is in the main Marvel universe. And a lot of the character designs in here I really like. I love whenever they give Cap these military style outfits. I really like that. And this story also gives us the Chitauri from the Avengers for the first time, though they are really different to what they look like in the Avengers movie. And speaking of the MCU, this is where you get a lot of the inspiration for the original phase of the MCU. I really felt it had a real Ultimates feel to it before the films got a little bit lighter and fluffier over time. Though the MCU never went to the extremes that this does. And some criticisms that this gets is that it was going for shock value rather than substance, which I can see how some people might think that, but I really don't think that it ever outweighed how good the story was and what an interesting take this is on the traditional Marvel characters. It keeps what people like about them, but it really did update them and make them much more contemporary for that time. Whether you thought they needed that or not, it's certainly an interesting vision, and I think it was realised really well. Thor is another great character in this story that's really different to what he was like in the original Marvel Universe, the 616. So again, I love the Giant Man as well, so it's not just one person that has the whole Giant Man formula, it's given to others later on. And the use of superpowers to shore up the US military is a big theme in here, because a lot of this is written post 9/11, so you can really feel that influence in here. And it's cool to see what effect. It's a little bit more like what superheroes would be like, I guess, in the real world than what we get in our 616 Marvel Universe. And yeah, we can see here Nick Fury. The fan casting for Samuel L. Jackson in this story done by Mark Millar is what carried over into the Marvel Universe and worked so well, having Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury throughout the whole MCU. And let's get up and try and find that gatefold. Okay, I'm not going to open the whole thing up because it does give some spoilers to the content of the book and the second half of the story, but it is amazing. It folds out. There's 4 panels on each side away from the original, so in total it's an 8-page image. Okay, it's fantastic, and it's one of the best single panels I've ever seen in a comic book, and it's worth it to have this just to have that record-breaking panel in your collection. Alright, and I'm going to jump back to the back matter now, because there is quite a lot of back matter in this omnibus, and it starts with some covers. Okay, so we get some variant covers or the covers for each of the first 12 issues, or 13 issues rather. There's 13 issues in the first series. And then the second, we get the same thing. Some of these give spoilers, so I won't spend too long analysing those. And then we get some variants, an annual cover, and then we get another story here where we're looking at some of the other heroes that could have been a part of the story, and they sort of do things in the background of the main story. And the art for this is done by Steve Dillon, the late Steve Dillon, and I love Steve Dillon's work, especially what he did on Preacher and what he did for Garth Ennis's Punisher run, and the same quality carries over here. You either love his art or you hate it. A lot of the faces of different characters do look the same, but I really enjoy it, and I will always miss his artwork. That we never get any more new Steve Dillon art makes me sad when I think about it for too long. All right, looking at the back here, we get extensive interviews with Mark Millar and Brian Hitch, which give a really good insight into their creative process. Probably some of the most extensive interviews I've ever seen in the back of an omnibus. And normally I don't read these things. I really want to move on to the next story, but I did spend the time to read all of this interview in the back. And it really just gives you an even further appreciation for the amount of work that went into this project. And then we get some sketches, so we can see what Brian Hitch's sketches look like before they're colored. And there's a huge amount of detail in his drawing. Again, I wish I could draw like this. I'm sure a lot of people do. One of the greats. Okay, and then we get some scripts by Mark Millar. A few more unused pages, so some pages that never actually made it into the story, and then some more pencils for pages that did. And that pretty much brings us to the end. So if you're a fan of back matter, you're going to get a lot in this story. And we get that pencils for that amazing spread the Gatefold spread that I showed you before. And that's it. So overall, what would I give this story? Honestly, I give it a 10 out of 10. I love this story a lot. I can understand some people's criticisms of it. I can understand that some people might think it is edgy for the sake of being edgy. I disagree, but I reserve my right to that opinion, and I would give this a 10 out of 10. If you have a spare $100 or so as an Aussie, definitely worth adding it to your cart and getting it in your collection. If you've never read this before, the Omnibus is the perfect format for this run. The bigger you can get Brian Hitch's artwork, the better. So whether you've read it before or not, do not hesitate to pick up this book. It's fantastic. Alright guys, thank you for watching. This has been another Omnibus overview for Pop Culture Down Under. I'll see you next time. Bye.